Good day there once again, viewers. Your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more Planetside 2 content. So guys, it's clear that the spark of this game has been reignited as of late. Server populations are up, which means that the game has seen a huge influx of newer players that I'm sure have been on the receiving end of some pretty brutal engagements against more experienced players. If you are a new player watching this, do not fret. This game is unlike any other out there, and it is without a doubt one of the hardest shooters to get the hang of in the modern market. But today, I want to dedicate some time towards giving you newer players some quick tips and tricks on how to play Planetside. We're going to be going down a rapid fire list of tips and tricks that cover the game's most basic core mechanics to the more in-depth stuff that can help you get your bearings on the game. So strap yourselves in, grab a pen and paper, and let's go down 30 tips and tricks on how to play Planetside 2. Tip number 1. Planetside 2 is an asymmetric game, meaning that each faction has different weaponry and traits that define them, so your choice of which faction you play will affect what options you have access to. For time's sake, the factions in their most basic forms are the New Conglomerate, mercenaries whose weapons and vehicles typically hit harder, all the while firing slower, the Terran Republic, an organised army whose weapons are typically faster firing with larger magazines, and the Vanu Sovereignty, who are alien worshippers that make use of energy weapons, typically resulting in better accuracy over your standard weapons. Use this information to decide which faction best suits your playstyle to get started. Tip number 2. Now clearly we want to get into a fight. Press the M key to bring up your map and then press the Join Combat button. This will automatically get you straight into the fight, and the game will also try to find you the best fight possible out of the bunch on the map. You can also activate the Join Combat command at any point when in game by pressing the J key by default. Tip number 3. Planetside 2 is a team-based game, so the best way to learn the game is with a squad. In your menu, navigate to the Social tab and then select Squads. From there you will be given a list of squads to join. Take note of the cohesion rating and whether or not the symbol is attached to the said squad, as it symbolises that it is a mentor squad. Tip 3.5. Go into your options menu and ensure that you are going to automatically join a squad each time you log in. I know that some people will enjoy to play a more solitary experience, but having some people to follow around who know the game a little better will always help with the learning process, and it gives you a direct line of contact to a knowledge base if you have any questions. Tip number 4. On the topic of direct lines of contact, take some time to set up in-game VoIP commands and your microphone. The 3 keybinds you are going to want to take note of are the proximity, squad, and platoon voice chats, as this will allow for you to communicate with your squad and ask any questions you may have within the game directly. Tip number 5. Try to avoid talking over a squad leader when they are directing the squad. Most squad leaders in this game are going to be happy to help, just try to remember that this isn't a one-on-one deal here, and they still do have a squad to lead regardless. Tip number 6. In-game, you are probably by now have noticed that there are 2 health bars. The blue one is your shields, and the green one is your actual health. The shields will recharge automatically after being out of combat for some time and not taking damage. Your health, on the other hand, will need to be regenerated by a medic or via a medkit on the field. Tip number 7. As you continue to play, you may hear your leader ask for you to redeploy. In Planetside 2, you can opt to respawn at any time by pressing the U key on your keyboard to activate the redeploy timer. Shooting and hitting an enemy or taking damage will cancel this action. Tip number 8. Wondering where to redeploy? The map has a few tools to help you decide where to go. Firstly, wherever there is action, you will see flashing markers on the map. Be sure to focus on these territories. Now, whenever you hover your mouse over a territory that is in contention, you will see a breakdown of the size of the battle and the split of the population to see how even the battle is. The closer the split is to a 50-50 split, or a 33-33-33 split if it's a 3-way, the better the fight is going to typically be. Try to prioritize these fights for a better experience to the point where you're not locked in a spawn room. Tip number 9. The main objective of the game is to try and capture territories that are spread out across the map. Now, to do this, you need to capture the control points that are located inside of these territories. This is done via proximity, so all you need to do is stand near the capture point to begin the capture. Now, kind of like how you would in any other game, like a Battlefield game. If you hold the designated capture point long enough, you will capture the base. If there are multiple capture points and you guys hold majority but not all, the capture progress will be slowed down. Tip number 10, once you capture a point, take note of its state listed at the top of your screen. The point will either be listed as secured or contested. A contested capture point means that there is still an enemy player near the point, which can often be a cloaked enemy waiting to recapture the point once you move on to a new position. Try to find and clear the enemy out before moving on. Tip 10.5, a flashlight on your weapon will reveal a cloaked enemy's position when you shine it on them, so that is a worthy investment if you come across this enemy type normally. Tip number 11, if you want a clearer idea of how much health you have at any given point in time, go into your settings menu and into the interface tab, check the show health numbers option. This will give you an exact figure of how much health and shields you have left at any given point in time. Tip number 12, by now you have probably gotten into a couple of fights and have noticed the different forms of currency in the game. Right now, there are 4 forms of currency to play with in Planetside 2. Certs, ISO 4, resources, and Daybreak coin. Certs are the most important ones here and are the main form of progression for Planetside 2. Every 250 experience points issues you a cert, and these can be used to upgrade classes, vehicles, and buy new equipment such as weapons. ISO 4 is used to upgrade implants, which is something you don't really need to worry about right now as a new player. Resources are used to resupply your grenades and utilities as well as spawn vehicles, and Daybreak coin is the premium currency of the game, which can be used to buy cosmetics and weapons. Tip number 13, while you can buy weapons with the premium currency in this game, all weapons are side grades of one another. While a weapon may perform better in one circumstance, yours is certainly going to perform better in another. I cannot urge enough that the default weapons available to all factions are incredibly competent and remain to be some of the favourite weapons available to long-term players, and these are players that own every single weapon in the game. In short, do not feel compelled to sink your first batch of certs into a new gun, as they're expensive and there are typically better ways to invest your early game certs. Tip number 14. So with that in mind, where should you spend your first certs? Well, to answer that, you first need to know the classes of Planetside 2. Starting from the top, the Infiltrator is your forward recon and sniper class. It comes with multiple tools for detecting enemy movements, can cloak, and hack enemy base terminals and turrets. They can be seen sniping in the cliffs or causing havoc from within. The Light Assault could be considered the skirmisher of Araxis. These nimble sods come with variations of jump jets that allow for them to traverse obstacles on the battlefield like no one else. They also come default with a rocket rifle for anti-vehicle capabilities, and can also be equipped with C4 for devastating crowd control capabilities. Coming up next is the Combat Medic, and if you were to ask any Planetside 2 player out there what the most important class on the field is, it would be the Combat Medic. These are soldiers capable of directly reviving and healing troops with their medical applicator, and they can also take on a collection of AoE healing effects with their different abilities and deployables. With their versatile assault rifles, the Combat Medic is also a force to be reckoned with offensively as well. The Engineer is a class of variety and can be equipped for many situations, a true jack of all trades. They bring forth a selection of turrets and mines that can focus on infantry or vehicle destruction, they can deploy cover, give out ammo, and most importantly, repaired allied vehicles and mech suits. An Engineer's potential is pretty much limitless. The heavy assaults are the brunt of any force. If you need to break through a defense, this is the class you bring to the fight. These beasts carry an overshield that they can activate to soak up extra damage when in a pinch, and can dish that damage right back at their enemies with high capacity light machine guns and rocket launchers. These players are the bricks of a team. But say a heavy assault doesn't quite cut it, the last unit here isn't really a class and is more or less a force multiplier. That's how much of an impact it can have here. The mech suit is a behemoth that uses 2 primary weapons, one for each arm, that can focus on engaging infantry, ground vehicles, or aircraft. Each faction has its own take on a mech suit with different weapons and abilities. It costs 450 resources to equip this beast, keep in mind. With all that in mind, typically the most cost-effective way to invest your first 1500 certs is in the Combat Medic. The Combat Medic has already been renowned for being a great learner class thanks to its ability to earn certs quickly through healing allies, and thanks to its brilliant arsenal of adaptable assault rifles that are fairly easy to use across the board. And on top of this, playing a support supportive role allows for you to learn the flow of battle in a slightly calmer manner, not to mention that every upgrade you put into the medic's abilities will allow for you to support your squad more efficiently, which means more certs for you in a quicker time frame. It's a win-win situation. Tip number 16, whenever you are playing a supportive role, you will see HUD elements and a minimap icon to symbolize players who need your services. Try to prioritize these areas, as this will be where you can make the biggest impact in that particular fight. Tip number 17, if you intend on buying a weapon with your hard-earned certs, always take yourself to the VR training rooms before doing so and testing the weapon in the firing ranges. All gear items there can be tested before purchase, and it's always best to get a first-hand experience with the weapon before buying it. Tip number 18, you can also trial a new weapon in combat by going to unlock it and then selecting the trial option in the buy screen. This will give you a 30-minute time period with the weapon to test it in the field. Tip number 19. By this point, I'm sure that you've also started to notice the vehicles that plague Araxis. Planetside 2 is a combined arms game, with some vehicles being incredibly integral to the way the game flows. The vehicles you can find are the Flash, a two-seater ATV which acts primarily as a fast transport option or a stealthy combat unit for the cheekier player. The Harasser, a three-seater buggy-like vehicle which has a driver, top-mounted gunner, and a rear rumble seat. These are hard-to-hit, hit-and-run vehicles, great for causing fast-paced carnage. The Sunderer, a 12-person troop transport that can also act as a forward spawn option when deployed. These are integral to attacks. The Ant, a vehicle used for gathering quartium, which is then used subsequently for base building, something that you really shouldn't need to worry about too much as a newer player. The Lightning, a light single-seater tank that can be built for taking out armor, infantry, or aircraft. And the MBT, a two-seater main battle tank that is a true force on the battlefield when crewed by a competent crew. Each faction will have its own Empire-specific MBT. Tip number 20. Aircraft are also a factor on the battlefields of Araxis, which you will find the Empire-specific fighter, a single-seater fighter aircraft capable of wresting control of the skies and making light attack runs on ground targets. Each faction will also have its Empire-specific fighter, as the name suggests. The Valkyrie, a quick, agile six-man transport for getting into tight spaces. Its ability means it cannot transport mech suits, however. The Liberator, a beefy gunship that focuses on air-to-ground bombardment against infantry or vehicles. And lastly, the Galaxy, a 12-man aerial transport that is designed to lift entire squads from point A to point B. Tip number 21. Vehicle gameplay in Planetside 2 can be extremely punishing and requires some knowledge of the general map layout to be effective in. This will come from practice in-game, but the best way to learn vehicle play is participate in an armor column that your faction may be doing and watch what the more experienced players may be doing. Learn by participating with those guys who are more experienced. It's the best way to learn armor in this game. Tip number 22. The Lightnings and main battle tanks have different resistances based on which direction the tank takes damage, the front being the strongest and the rear being the weakest. Always try to position yourself in a way that covers your rear from enemy fire if you want your take to last longer. Tip number 23. As you continue to play, take note of the audio cues from different factions. Voice lines, weapon sounds, and infiltrator cloak noises all differ between each faction and can be a dead giveaway to the position of a sneaky hostile in the right situation. Tip number 24. With that said, don't get too twitchy. Friendly fire is a thing in this game, and the last thing you want to do is blast a friendly in the face on the suspicion that he was looking at you funny. Learn your faction colors and keep that trigger finger in control. You'll make more friends that way. Tip number 25. Be sure to use the Q-spot functionality. The game on this front runs like your old-style Battlefield games where if you spot someone, everyone knows about it via map markers and 3D markers. Use that to your advantage if someone is truly pissing you off. Tip number 26. Across the map you will come across jump pads and lift pads. Now, jump pads will send you to a certain point of a territory, or to another territory, at high speed and are commonly used for getting into biolabs or for defenders to reach distant points on bases. The lift pads will carry you vertically to higher points on a base. Think like elevators, but cooler. Jump pads will be color coded as either in a neutral white or in faction colors. When in neutral, anyone can use them, and when colored by faction, well, you get the idea. Jump pads can be used by any player at any time and will be color coded accordingly as well. Yellow will take you up, blue will take you down. Tip number 27, as soon as you contact these pads, you can veer off them at any time and not take fall damage. This is particularly effective when in a watchtower and you need to make a quick descent down to the ground floor. Use this to your advantage. Tip number 28, if you look at the grander scale of the map, you will see that each territory is connected by links. These are called Lattice Links. Now, all Lattice Links will eventually connect all territories back to the warp gate of the faction that owns the territory. However, if another faction severs a link that connects a piece of territory back to the warp gate, then the territory will be considered cut off. The defending faction as a result will lose access to all spawn locations while the territory is in this quote-unquote cut-off state. This strategy is normally referred to as backcapping and is really powerful, especially in your alerts where territory really matters. Tip number 29, at some larger bases such as amp stations, watchtowers, biolabs or tech plants, you may come across shield generators or SCUs. The shield generators will link up to a gate on the base that will either block vehicles or infantry, or both, from passing through those gates. The SCU of these major bases allows for defenders to spawn into the main spawn room, and destroying this device, as you can probably guess, completely disables the ability for the defenders to spawn in the spawn room. These generators/SCUs need to be armed by walking up to them and interacting with them, and there will be a countdown before they explode. Defenders can disable this process, so be sure to defend it while it is armed. And coming in last but not least at tip number 30, every base will have a different layout when it comes to terrain, layout of structures, and special features such as jump pads. However, every base will be made up of the same building types, which are going to commonly house objectives. Learn these building layouts to best position yourself for attacks and defenses on the capture points within. Knowing the types of angles that you can push to best defend a point is going to be extremely powerful in the long run. Whew, and after all that, guys, that really does conclude everything I've got to talk about in this video in regards to new player tips and tricks. Now, this video was a very wide stroke on Planetside 2. It attempted to cover a lot of different aspects of the game, all in one, without going into too much depth about each of those respective aspects. And I understand that there may be a market out there for those more in-depth guides. I'm going to be doing videos for that in the long run for each class, vehicle, and even some of the major bases. This video was intended to be a one-stop guide so that a new player could enter the game and at least have a general understanding as to what was going on and know how to read the map, know how to get into fights, know what the classes and vehicles do, and just also offer some general tips as to how to, best navigate the battlefield and enjoy yourself in Planetside 2, because without having that background knowledge, Planetside 2 can be a frustrating experience, so I want to try and negate that as best I can. Guys, if you found yourself enjoying today's video, whether you be a new player, a veteran that learned a thing or two today, or you just enjoyed the gameplay, please feel free to backhand that like button and follow me on all my social medias, including Twitch. A lot of the gameplay for this video was captured from Twitch, and be great to have you guys over there as well, as we can hang out and just chill out while we play some games and things like that. If you guys are interested in keeping up to date with my, all things related to me, my Discord and Twitter are also linked in the description down below, guys. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on Araxis and in the next video. Take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace out. See you guys next time.